the beneficiary list of the comprehensive agriculture support program. The program also saw, late distribution of farming input, distribution of late farming input sets, coupled with high cost of farming inputs and shortage of farming inputs on the market. So obviously, we do understand that a lot of small-scale farmers do really rely on the comprehensive agriculture support program, or the FISP, as it was called in the past. So, a lack of access to quickly, prepare for the farming season, or to quickly access the input is obviously something that would border on the productivity, and also, the shortage that we are sort of having right now.
Mm. And with going forward, I mean, still on this particular issue, seeing that you've raised what you think could have been the problem, and one of the things that also came about, from 2022 to 2023, is you spoke about, input support and so on. Government did bring up issues of, systems, people getting accustomed to system, cleaning up the system, so that at least there is fairness in how this distribution is done. But the different reasons that have been given by government, have they been substantive enough to understand why exactly we saw the situation happen, the background to the situation?
Yeah, I mean, there's always that official information that comes from government, and of course it is to a huge extent factual. But also, I think it's also important that we as civil society begin to also add our voice to what we also believe could have been some of the loopholes that existed in the distribution. So I think it's very important that, honestly, we begin to see some sort of a robust system in terms of implementing the comprehensive agriculture support program. The 2022-2023 implementation period could be a blueprint for the next farming season. So just to be able to address all the irregularities that did sort of happen.
Now, do you think the importation of this commodity could help in addressing the challenge that is being faced at the moment?
Well, first of all, it's quite unfortunate that we actually have to reach a level, importing a commodity that we have the potential to produce in bulk to sustain the domestic market and even the regional one. But besides that, I think, of course, this may help resolve some issues in the short run or temporarily. But with the exportation allowance, it is very hard to predict what this actually means for the Zambian market.
Now, what has also come up, government through the Minister of Agriculture also making recommendations of Zambians to consider cassava, to consider sorghum, seeing that the demand for mini meal has been quite high, the maize meal in this case being quite high, and people being encouraged to try out other options that are quite nutritious as well, such as cassava and sorghum that was mentioned by the Minister. What's your take on the suggestion here of the alternatives?
Well, I think it's very important, obviously, that people, should be able to have access to almost every single commodity that they so wish to have. Consumers should have that choice, at least. But also, we need to understand that the minister does bring out a very fair point. We've been so reliant on the same, sort of staple food for so many years, and this is quite, risky, because if you don't have enough substitutes, and the main staple food is disrupted, then obviously this borders on food security. So it's very important that we really begin to embrace some of these substitutes, such as cassava, such as rice. They might be a little bit more expensive than the maize meal itself, but it could be important for consumers to find a mix among these substitutes to ensure that they still have access to a sustainable diet for every single provided month.
Now, one thing we also know is that as JCTR, you do release the basically the nutritious basket BNB every month. And the last one we saw for the month of March, we saw a reduction of about 200 kwacha. But let's look at what this could mean going forward, because we've also seen and heard in certain places people have to buy one bag. It's one bag per person. That's in some stores. And there's been the shortages in some parts of the country, which has been attributed to the rampant mini meal smuggling. But what kind of impact could this have in the cost of living, especially getting into the next month?
Right. So just to also give a little background on the previous report, the cost of living report that were released, a lot of people were, sort of shocked to see a drop given the situation. But also just to echo on that, this drop was largely driven by the reduction in prices of food items such as carpenter. Probably owing to the end of the fish pan season. Roller meal also did see a decline or some level of stability. This scenario is probably different for April or the end from the beginning of March up to going forward. Other items were beef, cassava flour, as well as chocolate prices. So these obviously did sort of decrease, but everything else remained unchanged, and the cost of living went above 9,000. But also to speak to your question, Chimweka, I think the issue is that obviously if people do not have access to maize meal, if they do not have access to a stable market, obviously this borders on in the cost of living. Obviously, there will be a level of price instability and some unfavorable practices by some producers or some suppliers of maize meal. So at the end of the day, that burden of an increase in the cost of living that is created by the shortage of meal is going to fall largely on consumers, and this is something that really needs to be addressed in an expeditious way.
What are your thoughts also on the various stakeholders involved in food security in the country? Obviously, we start off with the farmers, then we move on to the millers as well who are involved in this. And because of what's happening, the demand clearly gets higher for them, and government also through the minister is also encouraging them, especially the commercial farmers, to capitalize on this demand. The millers as well did disclose. We spoke with the association president, Andrew Chintala, who says it's adding even more pressure for them. But what positive can also be seen, I guess, from the demand that has increased now for these stakeholders, particularly the farmers and also the millers?
Yeah, I think this is a very, opportunities have been sort of presented for producers here. So this should be an impetus for us to be able to produce more in the future so that we meet this excess demand. But it's not only the local demand. The demand is also outside the country. So this is why we're having these issues of smuggling, and also people would rather send the commodity outside where the same commodity is fetching a price that is 3 times over. So it's very important that in the next farming season we see a high level of sort of productivity. Also the comprehensive agriculture support program has to be well implemented so that we ensure that we have a robust sort of production and we have a robust sort of yield.
And as we conclude on this very issue of what's happening, issues of food security, and what Zambians generally can be doing, what else do you think can be done from a citizen's perspective to ensure that we have better stability when we talk about food security in the country?
All right. I think for now, what would be important is to, in the meantime, desperate times call for desperate measures. But I don't think it's really a desperate measure. If we had to embrace the next available commodities that will give you the same level of nutrition. So just like the minister did mention that we could perhaps consume cassava, we could consume sorghum, rice as well. In the meantime, as government is trying to sort out this situation. So I think that is one of the things that citizens can do. But also I think it's the issue of how citizens could be more. Could engage more in agricultural practices. Of course, over 90% of the population is obviously engaged in farming, but also, at the domestic level, I think we should be able to see that Zambian households begin to produce food at the household level for that subsistent sort of production for the domestic consumption.